picture the most enigmatic, maybe even the most controversial author of our time, who pops into your head? I'm talking about the guy whose books are, banned in certain U.S. prisons, but at the same time, they're treated like sacred texts in Silicon Valley boardrooms.
It has to be Robert Greene.
It has to be.
There's really no one else who occupies that strange little intersection of culture.
Yeah.
He's kind of the modern Machiavelli.
Exactly. You know the titles: The 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, Mastery.
Yeah.
Just saying those titles out loud, it makes some people lean in and other people recoil in horror. He has this reputation as a teacher of the dark arts.
A manual writer for villains.
Right.
Which is a reputation he is very, very aware of. And honestly, it's a reputation that kind of misses the point.
How so?
People assume he's teaching you how to be evil. But if you actually read the work, and I think more importantly, if you listen to the man himself, he would maybe he's teaching you how to survive.
Right.
How to survive in a world that is, frankly, often indifferent to your feelings.
Yeah. So he's not teaching you how to be a shark.
He's teaching you how not to get eaten by one. That's the distinction.
And that distinction is really the heartbeat of what we're doing today. We are not just, skimming the back covers of his bestsellers. We are doing a proper deep dive.
We really are.
We have a huge stack of notes here, and it's all centered around a really incredible recent conversation Greene had. It was vulnerable, it was wide-ranging, and it was raw.
It was. It covers all the hits, the power dynamics, the seduction strategies, but it also goes into territory he rarely, if ever, touches.
Like what?
Well, we have material here on his personal biography that explains why he sees the world this way.
Yeah.
We have notes on his struggles with, abject failure in his 30s.
Yeah.
And maybe most significantly, we're going to discuss the massive stroke he suffered back in 2018.
Right.
That event forced him to take all these theories about power and control and test them against the ultimate loss of control, losing the function of your own body.
It is a huge agenda. We are essentially trying to decode the operating system of human nature, according to Robert Greene. We're going to redefine what power actually means, and spoiler alert, it is not what you think it is.
Not at all.
We're going to look at the mechanics of seduction and why that advice, just be yourself, is statistically some of the worst advice you could ever give a single person.
It really is. We'll also look at the biology of mastery, the actual neuroscience behind it, and then finally, how to find resilience when life really, really tries to break you.
So let's start at the beginning, because I think the biggest misconception about Robert Greene is that he was, born into this.
Right.
When you read the 48 Laws of Power, it sounds so authoritative, so aristocratic. You picture this guy in a velvet smoking jacket, sitting in a high-rise, looking down on the ants, sipping brandy.
Like he's a Bond villain or something. But the reality is so much grittier and, frankly, so much more relatable.
So what is the reality?
Before the 48 Laws of Power was published, Robert Greene wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a general. He wasn't a politician.
He was a drifter.
He was a total drifter.
And when we say drifter, we don't mean he, took a gap year to find himself in Thailand. We mean he held approximately 80 different jobs before he sold his first book.
80. E-I-G-H-T-Y.
Just let that number sink in.
It's unbelievable. Most people don't have 80 jobs in 5 lifetimes.
It's staggering. I was looking through the list of gigs he had, and it reads like the resume of someone who is actively running away from stability.
What's on the list?
He worked in construction. He was a tour guide in Europe. He taught English in some remote part of Spain. He worked in a detective agency.
A detective agency, seriously?
Yep. He even helped write an encyclopedia at one point.
Which sounds like the setup for a movie. But for him, it was just...
Yeah.
It was low-level grunt work. He was just bouncing around, seemingly aimless.
And he admits that at the time, his parents were worried. He was worried. He was getting older, into his 30s, and he had nothing to show for it. But looking back now, he claims this wasn't wasted time.
No, this was the research phase.
The research phase.
That is the key insight. If Robert Greene had done what he was supposed to do, if he had gone to law school or gotten an MBA, he would have been siloed.
Right, you'd have one perspective.
He would have learned how lawyers think or how bankers think. But because he was on construction sites and then in Hollywood writers' rooms and then in hotel lobbies and then in detective agencies, he saw the same patterns of behavior playing out across every single class line.
He realized that the construction foreman and the Hollywood executive were basically playing the exact same game.
Exactly the same game. The costumes change, right? The vocabulary changes. One guy wears a hard hat. The other wears an Armani suit.
But the manipulation, the envy.
The power plays. Identical. He realized that human nature is universal, and you can only really see that if you step out of your own bubble.
But let's not, romanticize the struggle, because the notes here are pretty stark. He was struggling.
Big time. We're talking about a guy in his late 30s. He was 37 or 38 years old. He was living in a tiny apartment, borrowing money from his parents just to eat.
Wow.
He describes having these floating suicidal thoughts. Not like a plan, but just this feeling of despair. He knew he was ambitious. He knew he had talent, but nothing was sticking.
By all conventional metrics, he was a failure.
A complete failure. And that desperation is important. It fueled the book.
The 48 Laws of Power isn't a book written by a guy who won. It's a book written by a guy who was terrified of losing forever.
And then comes the main character moment, the turning point.
Yeah.
He's in Italy working yet another random job, and he meets a Dutch book packager named Joost Elfers.
Now, for those who don't know, a book packager is a very specific niche in publishing. It's someone who designs and produces a whole book concept and then sells the finished product to a publisher.
Right. And Elfers asked Greene, just casually sitting there in Italy, do you have any ideas for a book? And Greene says it just came vomiting out of him. It wasn't a polished pitch. It was 20 years of frustration.
All the bitterness, all the observation.
All the times he'd been screwed over by what he calls Hollywood assholes. He just launched into this improvised speech about how modern office politics are just the court intrigues of Louis XIV or, the Borgias, just without the wigs and tights.
He told him, look, we think we're so civilized. We think we've evolved.
But we haven't. We are just primates in suits. And Elfers, he saw the fire in his eyes. He saw the conviction. And he told Greene, okay, write a treatment. I'll pay you a stipend to survive while you do it.
And for Greene, this was his get rich or die trying moment. He calls it his desperate moment.
His one shot.
He went back to Los Angeles, borrowed even more money, and wrote like his life depended on it.
Because, in a way, it did.
But here's the thing that surprised me in the research. The 48 Laws of Power. It didn't launch with a massive marketing campaign. It wasn't an overnight bestseller on the New York Times list.
No, not at all. It was a slow burn, a sleeper hit.
It started selling in independent bookstores. But then it found a readership that the publishers never, ever anticipated.
It found the hip-hop community.
This connection is so fascinating. You have Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Drake, absolute titans of the industry, quoting this book written by a Jewish guy from Los Angeles who just really likes history.
It seems like a mismatch, doesn't it?
But is it?
Not when you think about it.
Yeah.
Greene explains it perfectly. He says the music industry, and specifically the hip-hop world in the 90s and 2000s, was a shark tank.
Utterly. It was raw, unregulated capitalism. You had artists getting exploited by labels, fierce rivalries between crews.
Literal life and death stakes.
Right.
So if you're a young artist coming up in that environment, you don't need a book on how to be a nice manager.
Yeah. No.
You need a manual on how to navigate a predatory environment without getting eaten alive. You need to know how to spot a snake. You need to know how to leverage your position. And Greene's book provided that vocabulary.
It became a handbook for survival. And Greene points out a really interesting data point. The book is selling more copies now in 2024 terms than it did when it was released in 1998.
It's accelerating. It's not slowing down.
Which, for him, validates his core thesis.
Completely. He believes he hit on a timeless truth. He argues that human nature hasn't changed for hundreds of thousands of years. We are sophisticated primates. We have iPhones, we have AI, we have Zoom calls. But the operating system underneath, the drive for status, the envy, the aggression, the tribalism, is exactly the same as it was in ancient Rome or Renaissance Florence.
Which brings us to the central theme of his work, and really the word that defines him, power.
Yeah.
But we need to stop here and actually define terms, because when most people hear power, they think of, Vladimir Putin. They think of a dictator.
Right, a billionaire buying a social media platform just because he can.
Yeah.
They think of dominion over others.
That is the common definition, but it is not Greene's definition. And this is the reframe that changes everything.
It really is.
So what is his definition?
Greene defines power as a feeling.
A feeling, not a position or a title.
No. It is the internal sensation of having control over yourself and the events in your life. It is agency.
So it's an internal metric, not an external one.
Precisely. And to understand it, you have to flip it. Greene argues that the most corrosive, toxic, miserable feeling a human being can experience is powerlessness.
He quotes Malcolm X on this, doesn't he?
He does. The quote is something like, absolute power corrupts, but absolute powerlessness corrupts absolutely.
Wow.
Think about it in your own life. When do people behave the worst? When do they become passive-aggressive? When do they gossip? When do they sabotage projects at work?
When they feel like they can't do anything about their situation, when they feel trapped.
Exactly. When you feel helpless, when you feel you can't influence your boss or your spouse or your own financial situation, you don't just accept it. You start playing dirty little games to claw back a tiny sense of control. You become toxic.
That is such a massive shift in perspective. We usually tell people, don't seek power, power is bad, stay humble. Right. Greene is saying, no, you need a baseline level of power and control just to be a healthy, functioning person.
You do. He talks about his early days as a naive college grad. He went into jobs thinking, if I do good work and I'm a nice person and I'm transparent, I'll be rewarded.
And what happened?
He got crushed over and over. He got fired for outshining the master, for making his boss look bad by being too eager, too smart.
Oh, Law 1.
Law 1. He wrote the laws not to teach you how to be a tyrant, but to spare you that specific pain, to teach you the physics of human ego.
Okay, let's dive into the physics of a couple of these laws, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Law 2. Never trust friends. Learn to use enemies. No, come on. Yeah. That sounds incredibly cynical. Never trust friends.
It does sound cynical if you view it through a sentimental lens. But Greene is talking specifically about the business world, the professional realm. And if you look at the logic, it's hard to argue with.
So walk us through the disaster scenario.
Okay, so you start a business. You hire your best friend, Dave. You think it's going to be great. You'll be a team. But immediately, the boundaries are blurred.
Right.
Emotional history enters the professional space. If Dave turns in a sloppy report, you hesitate to critique him because you don't want to ruin the friendship or make Saturday night at the bar awkward.
And Dave probably feels a little entitled, too.
Exactly. Dave thinks, hey, I'm the boss's friend. I have some slack. He gets comfortable. Meanwhile, the other employees see this favoritism and get resentful.
It creates a swamp.
It creates a swamp of unspoken emotion. And eventually, when you have to fire Dave because the work isn't getting done, you don't just lose an employee, you lose a friend. It's a tragedy.
Okay, I think we've all seen that movie happen. But use enemies, that's the part that feels really counterintuitive.
This is the team of rivals concept. Think about Abraham Lincoln staffing his cabinet. But on a personal level, an enemy, or let's say a professional rival, someone you've clashed with, they have no expectation of favors. If you go to a rival and say, look, we've had our differences, but I respect your skills. You're the best at what you do. I want you on this project.
That's a bury the hatchet move.
It is. And what happens? First, they're shocked. They didn't expect it. And second, because you have given them a second chance, they feel they have something to prove. They will work harder, with more loyalty, to show they are worthy of the trust than a friend ever would. You get their best work, and you neutralize a threat. It's a double win.
It's ruthless pragmatism, but it's also oddly optimistic. It believes people can change if the incentives are right.
That's Robert Greene in a nutshell.
Okay, then there's Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Now, we live in the era of radical transparency. You go on LinkedIn, and everyone is posting their 10-year plans, their deepest strategies, their vulnerabilities. Greene says this is basically suicide.
He says it depends entirely on the context. If you are leading a team, yes, you need transparency to inspire trust and alignment. You need everyone rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
But if you are dealing with competitors, if you are in a negotiation, transparency is just giving your opponent a roadmap to destroy you.
So what's the tactic? Is it just lying?
Not lying necessarily. It's more about misdirection. He talks about using red herrings. You feign interest in one goal to send your competitors scrambling down a rabbit hole to block it, while you quietly execute your actual goal in the shadows.
It's creating a fog of war.
It's the difference between playing chess and playing checkers. In checkers, everything is on the board. You see the move coming.
Right.
In chess, you sacrifice a pawn to set up a checkmate 10 moves later. And Greene's point is, you might not like playing chess. You might want the world to be a nice, open game of checkers. But if you were playing checkers while everyone else is playing chess, you are going to lose.
And that really touches on the moral objection people have to his work. They say, isn't this manipulative? Isn't this dark? And Greene answers this with a concept he borrows from Carl Jung, the shadow self.
This is a crucial part of his philosophy. It's fundamental. Greene asserts that everyone plays power games. Everyone. There are no exemptions.
Even the people who say they don't.
Especially the people who say they don't.
Why, especially them?
Greene argues that the people who claim to be saints or just good people are often the most dangerous. because they repress those urges. They deny their shadow.
And it comes out sideways.
And because they deny it, it leaks out in a weird, toxic ways. They become passive-aggressive. They use guilt as a weapon. They manipulate you while claiming to help you.
He even brings up Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. as examples of this. And he doesn't do it to tear them down. He does it to analyze their effectiveness.
Right. And this is where people get uncomfortable, but it's a really important analysis. He argues that Gandhi, for example, was a brilliant strategist. His nonviolence wasn't just a spiritual stance. It was a tactical weapon.
How do you mean tactical?
Gandhi knew the British public. He knew they were, at their core, liberal-minded. He knew they had a conscience. So he knew that if he could provoke the British authorities into beating unarmed Indians, and if he could get those images in the newspapers back in London,
The British public would turn against their own government.
precisely. It was a massive orchestrated campaign of shame. That is strategy. That is understanding power dynamics. That is using your opponent's own force against them.
And MLK.
A similar story. There's a moment in Birmingham, Alabama, where King's advisors told him not to use children in the marches. They said it was too dangerous.
Then he did it anyway.
He did it anyway. Why? Because he knew that a photo of a snarling police dog attacking a black child would shock white America out of its complacency. He needed that visual to break the deadlock.
That is a heavy realization. It implies that goodness isn't enough. You need competence and power to make goodness win.
Exactly. Power is a tool. You can use a hammer to build a Habitat for Humanity house, or you can use it to crack a skull. The hammer doesn't care. Greene is just trying to hand you the hammer and say, please, learn how to use this because the bad guys already know how.
Speaking of the darker aspects of our nature, let's pivot to a word that gets thrown around constantly these days. Narcissism.
Oh, yeah.
My ex is a narcissist. My boss is a narcissist. We use it as an insult, a diagnosis. Greene says, we are all narcissists.
He says it's a survival mechanism, and he traces it back to childhood. Think about it. When you're a toddler, you are the center of the universe.
Right.
Your parents attend to your every need. You cry, food appears. You are the sun. But as you age, that attention wanes. You have to share. You realize you aren't the center of the world. And that is a painful psychological wound.
So how do we cope with that loss of status?
We learn to self-soothe. We construct an internal image of ourselves that we love. We create self-esteem. That is what he calls healthy narcissism. It's the anchor that keeps us from falling apart when someone insults us or rejects us.
So the toxic narcissist is actually someone who failed at that step.
Exactly. This is the nuance people always miss.
Right.
The toxic narcissist, the one who flies into a rage, who needs constant praise, doesn't love themselves too much.
They don't love themselves at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Usually due to some kind of childhood trauma or abandonment, they never develop that internal anchor.
So they are a bottomless pit for validation.
They are a black hole for external validation.
Yeah.
They need you to tell them they are great constantly. And if you criticize them, they don't just get annoyed, they react with narcissistic rage because you are threatening their very existence. They have no internal cushion.
So what is the solution? Is it to kill the ego? To become selfless?
Greene says no. You can't fight biology.
Yeah.
If you try to repress your narcissism, it will just come out sideways in that passive-aggressive way we talked about.
So what do you do?
The goal is to transform self-absorbed narcissism into healthy narcissism.
And how do you do that?
By turning the energy outward. Use your desire for recognition to fuel a great work of art or a business. Use your sensitivity to read other people, which becomes empathy. Greene argues that empathy is just narcissism turned inside out. Instead of asking, how do I feel, you ask, how do they feel? You use your powers of observation on them.
This turning outward is the perfect segue to the next pillar of his philosophy, seduction.
Yes. And again, we need a disclaimer. When Greene talks about seduction, he isn't just talking about sleeping with someone.
It's bigger than that.
Much bigger. He calls seduction the highest form of power.
Why is it higher than force?
Because it bypasses resistance. In a power struggle, you force someone to do what you want, and they resent you for it. They're looking for a way out. In seduction, they want to do what you want. You align your desires with theirs.
But he distinguishes between the cold seducer and the warm seducer.
He does. And he really dismisses the cold seducer, the manipulative pickup artist, the gold digger, the person who treats people like targets to be acquired. He says that's amateurish and unsustainable.
So he advocates for the warm seducer.
Yes. And the primary trait of the warm seducer goes back to that idea of being outer directed.
Outer directed. Let's unpack that.
Think about a bad date you've been on. Or even just a high-stakes social interaction, like a job interview. What is happening in your head?
A constant loop.
You're thinking, do I look good? Do they like me? Am I saying something smart? Is there spinach in my teeth?
The internal monologue of doom. I know it well.
Exactly. You are trapped in your own head. You are inner-directed. And because you are focusing on yourself, you are missing all the cues coming from them.
So the warm seducer?
The warm seducer shuts that voice off. They enter the other person's spirit. They absorb the other person's mood, their insecurities, their needs, and they reflect them back. They make the other person feel like the star of the movie.
That is so true. We are so starved for attention in this culture that when someone actually listens to us, like deeply listens, without looking at their phone, it's intoxicating.
It is. It's a drug. And conversely, Greene outlines the anti-seducer. These are qualities that repel people immediately.
Oh, the anti-seducer. I feel like we all know at least 3. What are the traits?
Preaching or moralizing. Nobody wants to be judged on a date. Insecurity. It's just an energy drain on the other person.
Yeah.
But the one he highlights most, and he tells a great story about this, is tightness.
Tightness. You mean like being cheap?
Yes, but it's deeper than just money. It's a tightness of spirit.
What's the story?
He tells this story about a friend of his, a wealthy guy, who went on a first date with a woman he really liked. The dinner went great, candlelight, good conversation, chemistry. Then the bill comes, and the guy pulls out a discount coupon.
Oh, no, not the coupon on a first date.
It's a 20% off coupon.
Yeah,
And the woman never called him again.
I can believe it.
And Greene argues it wasn't about the $20. It was what the gesture signaled. It signaled, I am calculating, I am not willing to let go, I am not generous. Seduction is about creating a fantasy. It's a break from reality. Using a coupon drags the mundane world of thrift and accounting right into the middle of the romance. It pops the bubble.
It kills the spell instantly.
Exactly. Generosity is seductive because it signals abundance. Tightness is anti-seductive because it signals scarcity.
He also talks about the difference between vulnerability and insecurity. And I think this is a crucial distinction for modern dating because we're told to be vulnerable all the time.
We are.
But often we just end up dumping our trauma on people on the first date, and it's a mess.
That's the trap. Greene says vulnerability is seductive. The root word comes from the Latin for wound. It's about showing a soft spot. It implies trust. It invites the other person to help you, to heal you.
Like a puppy rolling over and showing its belly.
It's exactly that. It creates a biological urge to nurture and connect.
An insecurity.
Insecurity is repulsive. It smells like desperation. It's asking, tell me I'm pretty, tell me I'm smart, why didn't you text me back? It places a burden on the other person to constantly prop you up.
So vulnerability gives the other person a role.
Insecurity gives them a job.
That is such a good way to put it. Wow. Greene seems to think we are in a bit of a crisis of seduction right now, especially among young men.
He's very concerned about the stats. Sexlessness among men under 30 is skyrocketing. Relationships are failing. And he blames what he calls the digital trap.
Which is?
Specifically, the combination of dating apps and pornography.
How does that combination break the seduction mechanism?
Well, let's look at porn. It hacks the brain. It offers sexual novelty with zero effort and zero risk of rejection. It creates an unconscious expectation of easy, quick satisfaction.
But real seduction is slow.
It's slow. It's full of tension. It's full of awkward pauses and missteps. If your brain is wired for the click and reward loop of porn, you don't have the patience for real human interaction.
And the apps.
The apps gamify people. They turn humans into trading cards you can swipe away. But more importantly, they remove the physical cues. Greene says you cannot swipe seduction. Seduction is a biological dance. It happens to the pheromones, the eye contact, the tone of voice, the body language.
He talks about the 95% rule, that 95% of communication is nonverbal.
And he urges people to get off the screen and relearn this lost language. He breaks down specific cues to look for.
Like the smile.
Right. A fake smile is easy. It's just the zygomatic major muscle pulling up the corners of the mouth. You can do that on command.
The customer service smile.
The customer service smile. But a real smile, a Duchenne smile, engages the orbicularis oculi, the muscles around the eyes. You get the crow's feet. You can't really voluntarily contract those muscles easily. If you don't see the crow's feet, the person is lying or just being polite.
And the feet. I loved the bit about the feet. That was new to me.
The feet are the most honest part of the body.
Why?
Because we rarely think about them. We control our faces because we know people are watching, and we manage our expressions. But we forget our feet. If you're at a party talking to someone and their torso is facing you, they're nodding along, but their feet are pointed toward the door.
They want to leave.
They want to leave. Their brain has already exited the conversation. The body's just waiting for a break in the sentence to follow.
He told a story about Milton Erickson that illustrates this power of observation perfectly, and it ties back to that idea of struggle breeding mastery.
This is an incredible story. Milton Erickson was one of the most famous hypnotherapists of the 20th century, a genius. But his origin story is intense.
What happened?
As a teenager, he contracted polio. He was totally paralyzed. He was unable to move anything but his eyeballs. He was stuck in bed in a farmhouse, bored out of his mind, thinking he was going to die.
Talk about a lockdown. That's unimaginable.
So to survive the boredom, he watched his family. He couldn't speak to them. He watched his sisters interacting with boys. And because he had no sound, metaphorically, he started noticing the micro-expressions.
The little things.
The way a hand hesitated before touching a shoulder. The way a pupil dilated. He learned to read human psychology entirely through the body.
He decoded the nonverbal language.
Exactly. And when he eventually recovered some movement, which he did by watching his baby sister learn to walk and mimicking her muscle movements in his mind, he became a therapist.
And he was a wizard.
He was a wizard. He could look at a couple walking into his office and know they were getting a divorce before they even sat down, just by how they stood next to each other in the waiting room.
That brings us to the idea of mastery. Erickson didn't get that skill by reading a textbook. He got it through thousands of hours of intense, painful observation.
And that is the premise of Greene's book, Mastery. He actually wrote it because he was worried.
Worried about what?
He thought his readers were getting the wrong message from the 48 laws. He thought people were thinking, okay, if I just learn the politics and the manipulation, I'll be successful.
And he's saying that's not enough.
He's saying that's the icing, not the cake. The cake is competence. You have to actually be good at something.
Right.
If you are a terrible architect, no amount of Machiavellian maneuvering will make your building stand up. Gravity doesn't care about your politics.
He gets into the biology of this. The famous 10,000-hour rule isn't just a metaphor for him, it's a physiological process.
It's about myelin. Every time you repeat a task, playing a scale on the piano, writing a line of code, welding a joint, you are wrapping a sheath of myelin around that neural pathway in your brain. It's like insulating a wire.
So the signal gets faster.
It travels so fast that eventually you don't have to think about it anymore. It becomes instinct.
He uses the Stevie Wonder example.
He does. He watched Stevie Wonder play recently. Stevie is blind, obviously. But his hands know the keyboard better than most of us know our own faces. He isn't thinking about where C# is.
His hands just go there.
They just go there. That is mastery. It's when the skill moves from the conscious brain to the nervous system.
But Greene has a real beef with the word passion. Follow your passion is the standard graduation speech advice. He hates it.
He hates it because passion suggests high energy. It suggests fun. It suggests that if you find the right job, it will be a constant thrill ride.
And the reality of mastery
is boredom. It is tedium. It is playing the same scale 500 times until your fingers hurt. It is debugging code for 10 hours. It is reviewing the same contract for the 50th time.
Right.
Greene says if you rely on passion, in the modern sense meaning excitement, you will quit the moment it gets hard. You will quit in what Seth Godin calls the dip.
So what do we look for instead of passion?
A life task. He describes this as a visceral, almost primitive connection to a subject. Usually it appears in childhood. Maybe you were obsessed with maps. Maybe you collected bugs. Maybe you loved taking things apart to see how they worked. That deep, irrational interest is the only thing strong enough to pull you through the boredom valley of the 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
You need an obsession, not just a passion.
He has very specific advice for people in their 20s, what he calls the apprenticeship phase.
This is advice that is very hard to follow in our economy, but he swears by it. He says, do not choose the job with the highest paycheck. Choose the job with the highest learning potential.
That's a tough sell when you have student loans, and rent is $3,000 a month.
It is. It's a huge ask. But he views it as an investment. He gives this example. It is better to work for a small business owner, say a florist, as their personal assistant for minimum wage, where you see how they buy inventory, how they manage the books, how they deal with customers.
You learn the whole business.
You learn the whole thing. It's better to do that than to take a high-paying job at a massive corporation where you sit in a cubicle and do nothing but update one specific spreadsheet all day.
Because in the first job, you are learning the whole.
Exactly. You are learning how to run a business.
Right.
In the second, you are a cog. 10 years later, the cog is still a cog, maybe a slightly better paid cog, and the assistant is starting their own empire.
It's valuing learning over money.
For a limited time. If you do that in your 20s, he says, the money will come in your 30s and 40s. If you chase the money in your 20s, you might get stuck there forever.
And what's the mindset during this apprenticeship phase?
Observation mode. Shut up. Don't try to impress the boss with your brilliant ideas on day one. You don't know anything.
Be a sponge.
Be a sponge. Learn the politics. Learn the unwritten rules. Absorb the skills. Then, once you know the landscape, you can start to make your moves.
Now, we have to make a shift here. We've been talking about the ascent, climbing the ladder, gaining power, mastering skills. But in 2018, Robert Greene's life took a brutal, unexpected turn.
This is where the conversation shifts from the theoretical to the painfully real. He was 59 years old. He had just finished writing The Laws of Human Nature, which is a massive, dense book. He was exhausted.
And he had stopped taking his blood pressure medication.
Right, he wanted to be natural, he said.
And then the wasp.
It sounds like fiction, but it's true. He was driving his car, and a wasp flew in and stung him on the neck. He had a bad reaction, a lot of inflammation. That inflammation, combined with the high blood pressure and the stress of finishing the book, triggered a clot. He suffered a massive stroke.
The irony here is just tragic. Greene wasn't a sedentary academic living in his head.
Not at all.
He was a hiker, a swimmer, a mountain biker. His physical vitality was a huge part of his identity.
And in an instant, he was gone. He was paralyzed on his left side. He couldn't walk. He couldn't type with two hands. His autonomy was just stripped away.
He talks about the delusion phase of recovery.
Yeah. He's a driven guy. He's a mastery guy. So he thought, okay, this is a challenge. I will work harder than anyone. I will be back to normal in 6 months.
He attacked rehab like it was another book project.
Exactly. He thought he could outwork the brain damage.
But the body didn't cooperate.
He hit a plateau after about a year, and he realized, with dawning horror, I'm not getting fully better. This is it. This is my new life.
And that is when the depression hit.
Hard. He describes the daily humiliation of it. Tying his shoelaces takes 10 minutes. He can't cut his own steak at a restaurant. For a man who wrote the book on power on control, this must have been hell on earth.
It was the ultimate test of his philosophy, wasn't it?
It was. But this is where Greene, I think, really earns his stripes. He didn't just wallow. He tried to reframe the suffering.
How?
He says he now understands helplessness in a way he never could before. He understands the plight of the disabled or the elderly on a visceral, not just intellectual level. It gave him an empathy he didn't have.
He mentioned watching people walking their dogs.
Yes. He looks out his window and sees people walking their dogs. To us, that's nothing, a chore. To him, it's a miracle. And he sees them looking at their phones, dragging the dog along, looking annoyed. And he feels this mix of envy and pity. Envy because they can walk effortlessly, and pity because they're wasting the miracle. They don't realize how lucky they are to just move.
He's using Zen meditation now to handle the intrusive thoughts?
He has to. He says the frustration is constant, but he tries to treat the morning sun, the ability to write for a few hours, the support of his wife. He treats them as these distinct, precious things. It's a softer Greene, a wiser Greene.
It leads to his thoughts on the future. When asked about his happiness, his answer was surprising.
Yeah, he admitted his peak happiness was back when the 48 Laws first succeeded, that sheer relief of escaping poverty. That was the high.
And now?
His happiness now is quieter. It's about survival. It's about the absence of terror. It's the ability to sit and write at 3 p.m. and not worry about rent.
And he's torn about where the world is going.
He is. The pessimist in him sees technology degrading us. He sees the apps, the anxiety, the disconnection, and he worries we're losing our humanity.
But the optimist in him looks at Gen Z.
He does.
What does he see in them?
Rebellion. He believes that eventually the human spirit will reject the fake. He thinks young people are going to get sick of the virtual world, sick of the AI, sick of the screens, and they're going to demand the real.
That's hopeful.
He even recounted a dream he had set in the year 2072, where humanity had finally figured it out and people looked genuinely happy. He hopes the younger generation is the bridge to that.
So, if we synthesize all of this, from the ruthless court politics of 48 Laws, to the neuroscience of mastery, to the quiet wisdom of a stroke survivor, what is the through line? What is the Robert Greene operating system?
I think the through line is reality, radical acceptance of reality. Greene is telling us, stop wishing the world was nice. It isn't. Stop wishing you were a saint. You aren't. Stop wishing success was easy. It isn't. Look at the world as it is, a place of power games, biological drives, and inevitable suffering.
And once you accept that reality,
Once you accept it, you stop being a victim. You can master your dark side, you can master your field, and eventually you can even master your own suffering. It's all about agency. Whether you are navigating a boardroom Shark Tank or navigating a paralyzed body, the goal is to keep the locus of control inside you.
that is the definition of power we started with.
That is it. It all comes full circle.
Before we sign off, I want to leave the listener with a final provocation, something Greene touched on that really haunted me. He urged us to stop taking our physical abilities for granted.
It's a question to sleep on, isn't it?
It is. If you had a stroke tomorrow, if you lost your ability to walk, to drive, to feed yourself, would your mind be a place you could live in? Have you built an inner world rich enough and a character strong enough to sustain you when the outer world collapses?
And are you using your time right now to build that strength, or are you just walking the dog while looking at your phone?
That's the heavy one.
It is.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.